Hello everyone, you're welcome to this edition of The Inside. I am Bable Jonathan. We're coming to you from our headquarters in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. Tension is building up across the Republic of Cameroon ahead of the official proclamation of results of the October 12, 2025 presidential election by the Constitutional Council Monday, October 27, 2025. And post-election or election violence erupting in different parts of the country, from Marwa to Ngaoundéré to Marwa to Garwa to Kaile, Yaoundé, and other parts of the country. Tension is building up with regards to allegations of fraud maneuvers intended to maintain incumbent President Paul Biya in power by stealing what has been qualified as the people's choice, stealing the people's vote, thwarting the verdict of the ballot box, notably the announced victory of Issa Chiroma Bakare, candidate of the Cameroon National Salvation Front political party, who declared himself a winner shortly after the close of polls on October 12, 2025. And there are calls coming from within and without Cameroon for the respect of the truth of the ballot box, the respect of the verdict of the ballot box, the respect of the will of the people. We're going to be looking at these issues in this edition of The Inside. We'll also be looking at the role of the Constitutional Council. There are calls coming through to the Constitutional Council members, urging them to uphold justice, to play the role of an institution of justice by upholding the will of the people. There are also calls coming through to the police force not to be manipulated. There are equally calls coming through to young people in Cameroon to stand up and defend and fight for justice. Meet our guest in some few seconds. Cameroon-born, US-based lawyer, Barrister ARREY Obenson is our guest, and he's joining us from St. Louis, Missouri, in the United States of America. He's a member of Project Cameroon, an initiative put in place by veteran Cameroonian journalist Eric Chinje and other Cameroonians in the diaspora to fight for justice, to fight for change in the Republic of Cameroon. Barrister, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Pamela, for giving me the opportunity to be here today.
Right. Let's have your perspective of the current socio-political climate in the Republic of Cameroon with regard to the October 12, 2025 presidential election and election violence that is erupting in different parts of the country. One person has already died in the course of the protests emanating from issues concerning allegations of fraud maneuvers, illegal manipulation intended to thwart the verdict of the ballot box, intended to steal the will of the people, as some government critics put it. A primary school teacher who died as a result of a bullet during a protest in Garwa, the hometown of Issa Chiroma Bakare, candidate of the Cameroon National Salvation Front, who's declared himself a winner, making a declaration based on the return reports that he has received from the different polling stations across the country. What's your reading of the current situation in your home country?
Well, let me start by saying that we should all, wish the family of Zohaira, who lost her life as a result of the political situation in the country. We wish her family the best, and we hope that her soul rests in peace. No election should result in loss of life. In the context of Cameroon, the law provides for an electoral process that 8 million Cameroonians subscribed to, duly registered to participate in the electoral process. They followed the law to the letter. They registered, they took their voting cards, they went out on October 12th. They voted, and based on the provisions of the Electoral Code, they stayed and they counted the ballots. They participated in the counting of the ballots and made sure that in leaving their polling stations, they knew what the results were at that polling station before leaving. Unfortunately, the context we're seeing that between when people registered for the election, when people went to the polling station, left with their results, when the results were sent to the divisional offices and regional vote counting commissions, those results were changed. And the results that got to the National Vote Counting Commission were different. So it is a very unfortunate circumstance that in this time and age, a country like Cameroon will find itself in this circumstance. The people of Cameroon should be out celebrating their political maturity. The people of Cameroon should be out celebrating democracy because of the process that was put in place. 12 political parties participated in this election, and unfortunately, only one political party has been accused of fraudulent exercises during the electoral process. And that happens to be the party in power, the CPDM, the party of President Paul Biya. No other party is being accused of this fraudulent exercises that we've seen where the votes are being changed. Why put a country through this process? Why spend so much money? Why invest so much political capital and raise this heightened emotional engagement if the end goal was to have this masquerade that is taking place? So this is why the country is faced with why there is heightened tension. If the President of the Republic, if the CPDM strongly believes that they won at the polling station, why all the military maneuvers? Why all of this? Why have they been warning people to stay in and stay? If they believe that they won, then we shouldn't be looking at it. In reality, Babylon, what we are experiencing is a coup. It's a coup because the will of the people is being subverted by a small minority of people. Call it what it is. We know what we know when we talk about coups, we think it has to be militarized. But this is actually a civil coup where the will of the people have been expressed. But a few people are actually subverting the will of the people, and it's unacceptable.
Well, those are still allegations as of now. We don't yet have the official figures from the Constitutional Council. But then all accusing fingers seem to be pointing to the ruling party, the Cameroon People's Democratic Movement, CPDM, and its militants, and of course, the incumbent President Paul Biya. But on the other side, accusations are also leveled against some politicians who are said to be manipulating young people and sending them out to the streets to be killed.
Well, let me talk about the allegations, but if you don't mind. Yeah, we can say that they are allegations, but they're factual because there's enough evidence to demonstrate that there has been rigging. And I look, let me use the example of Ndian, right? It is practically impossible to have 100% of registered voters in Yen participate in the electoral process. It is impossible. Nobody died, nobody got sick, nobody was scared of the tensions that exist there. It is impossible. So let us call it what it is. It's a fact that the regime has orchestrated fraud. We know that from the numbers that were presented at the National Vote Counting Commission, and there are many examples that can be cited. Now, with reference to the fact of pointing fingers at other political parties, right? Or everybody, I think every good citizen, every citizen of good conscience really wants peace. In fact, this is something that is common between human beings. We want to live in a peaceful environment. But for there to be peace, there has to be justice, right? Peace is not only the prevalence, it's not only the absence of conflict, but it's also the prevalence of justice, of opportunity, equity, and good conscience, right? So everybody wants peace. And the fact that people are saying to citizens that you have to go out and fight for justice those people should not be condemned as orchestrating violence, because peaceful manifestation is not violent. It's a legitimate expression of the will of the people. I keep reminding people that sovereignty of the country rests with the people. So if the people have spoken through the ballot box, then their will must be respected. If their will is not respected, then you can't have a country that is said to be peaceful.
So, why is it so necessary for a change of system to happen in Cameroon at this point? Because this is the question that those who are on the side of the ruling party are asking. Must there be change even at the expense of human life? Must there be, is it sacrosanct? Is it unavoidable, indispensable?
Yeah. There must be change because the people have expressed that they want change. In a civilized society, in a so-called democratic society, the will of the people must be supreme. That's one aspect of it, and that's a legal and factual debate. But there's a practical side of it. The practical side of it is, look at the country that we live in, look at the country we call our homeland, and see how much challenges. This is a country in which not every child can wake up and be sure they're going to have a meal. People do not have access to clean drinking water, even in the capital city. A few years ago, in 2023, I mobilized over 1 million people in Cameroon to clean up the country. The country is full with garbage heaps. The roads are failing infrastructure, an educational system that is regressing, a president that is completely absent, that has no understanding of who the people of Cameroon are, a president who has not set foot outside Yaoundé and Maroua in the last 10 years. In his country, leading a country. People say that we want this president because he brings stability and peace. People forget the number of lives that have been lost in the southwest and northwest regions of Cameroon. Because this president doesn't have the ability, neither nor capacity, or maybe he's not even willing to resolve an issue that could have been resolved right from the onset. Created a national dialogue which he abdicated his position, his authority to preside over this national dialogue. I can go on. A country plagued where corruption has become endemic. That the civilian has they saw a product in this campaign that was very defective. Very defective. 15 days into the campaign, Cameroonians, 15 days of campaigning, a candidate who had only one outing, even without fraud, even without any, the candidate was defective. 92 years old. I have a father who's just over 80, has challenges with capacity. 92 years old to manage a country of 30 million people with all the complexities that that it faces. We just have a lady who's died in the north as a result of these challenges. An active president would have come out and extended condolences, basic things, condolences to the family I started this conversation by extending my condolences to that family. That's what leadership is. And even as there's heightened tension in the country, a president, an active president, would step up and speak to the country and call for peace and call for collaboration, if that was an active president. So it's a practical why people voted for change. And then they go ahead to vote. And 43 years is not good enough for this president to step aside. It is a shame. It is a shame.
I want you to give us the human right perspective, the human rights side of the allegations of fraud maneuvers, manipulations, illegal manipulations to thwart the people's will. Give us the human right perspective of this with regards to the right ascribed to every citizen of every country to choose his or her leader.
Well, let me start by saying Article 2 of the Cameroonian Constitution entrusts the sovereignty of the country with the people. And that sovereignty is expressed by way of an election, which we all saw on October 12th. That's one aspect of it. Cameroon, as a country, subscribes to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is an integral part of the Cameroonian Constitution. So consequently, the freedom of expression, the freedom to choose, the freedom of self-determination, all of that is provided by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is an integral part of our Constitution. So the right if that's an integral part of the Constitution, and people have chosen, that right must be respected by all institutions, because nobody, there's no position, no institution that reigns supreme over the will of the people, and nobody should change the outcome of an electoral process, as we are experiencing in Cameroon.
Right. So before we continue with this conversation, let me just put this information through. The President of the Republic and First Lady Chantal, we have sent words of condolence to the family of the teacher killed by a bullet during the protest in Garwa in the north region of the country. So, Barrister, let's talk about the future of the country. When you look at the way things are happening, I'm not asking you to predict. Of course, you're not a prophet, but I want you to take your eyes into the future of the country. When you look at the way things are happening now, with the growing tension, and of course, looking at what could probably come out of the Constitutional Council on Monday, probably a victory for President Paul Biya. What do you see in the perspective, in the horizon?
Yeah. So let me be very clear. If the president has extended his condolences, then I think that's the duty that he should perform. I just have not seen that publication. Now, with reference to what happens on Monday, the Constitutional Council has a choice. They have a choice to endorse an unlawful act or a series of unlawful acts, which would do gross injustice to the people of Cameroon, and consequently even compromise the legitimacy of the court, which is itself already in question. That's one choice. Or they have the choice to respect and uphold the will of the people. If they make the choice to subvert the will of the people, then the only people who can, because there's no other court of appeal to that ruling that's going to, like the proclamation, the only other courtroom in which justice can be found is with the people. And how the people express or manifest largely depends on the people. On the other hand, if they choose to uphold the will of the people, I see clearly the joyous celebration that's going to be in the country, Cameroon, the opportunities that are going to be open for the next generation of Cameroonians to put this country on a path of transition that will allow us to redefine who we are as a country, revisit our constitution, revisit the structure, the form of state, address this question of hundreds and hundreds of political prisoners that are languishing in jails and in Kundigi across the country, resolve the issues of 8 years of crisis in Anglophone Cameroon, where children can go to school, people cannot live their lives with security. That's the opportunity that the court, the Constitutional Council, has to give to 28 to 30 million Cameroonians. Will that be the choice that they make? No. Going down the other path will put this country in a continuous civil strife, that we will continue to see challenges in the Northwest and Southwest province, because this government has not taken initiative to resolve that. In fact, they've just added insult to injury by all the fraudulent activities that happen in the Northwest and Southwest as a result of the elections. They've just added insult to injury. And so that's the picture. It's one of chaos and doom and decay as opposed to one of prosperity and progress. What choice? The difference between both choices is starking. And I hope that we go down the right path as a country.
Now,
I can't bet on it, though.
Right.
I can't bet on it.
Right, to avoid a chaotic situation that may emanate from the official proclamation of the results of the October 12, 2025 presidential election, there have been calls for peace coming from across the board, but more particularly from within the ranks of the ruling party and the administration. And there are concerns, there are questions about the sincerity of such calls for peace from within the ranks of the ruling party and the administration because of the fact that accusing fingers are pointing towards militants of the party, administrative authorities as the people who are said to be masterminding the fraudulent practices generating the tension that we're seeing now across the country. What's your reading of that?
Yes, the question is, why? Why do we find ourselves in this place? Why are we in a situation where the leaders of the country, the current leaders of the country, will be calling for peace? Before the election, people were going about their business on a daily basis. People who do their bench scheme were going about their business on a daily basis. People were going to work. People were opening their businesses on a daily basis. What happened within the last 2 weeks that makes puts the country in this situation of a crisis? The only intervening factor here is the outcome of the elections. People, I repeat, went to these elections with strict respect of the law, following the letter of the law. They voted, they got their results at every polling station, and thereafter, even on the day of voting, we've had a lot of recordings of fraudulent activities, again, all masterminded by the CPDM, the same people who are calling for peace. Think about it this way. A thief attacks you at your home, and then you, the victim that's being attacked, is being said to keep silent and not call for help. That is exactly what is happening, because we cannot, it is the same metaphor, because you are stealing the votes of the people, the voice, you're silencing the voice of the people, and you are asking them not to call for help. Manifestations is just a call for help. It doesn't have to be violent. The only people talking about the only people who are a threat to peace are the people who carried out the fraudulent exercises during the electoral process. And unfortunately, they are now the same people calling for peace. And nobody's asking anybody to be violent. People just want their voices to be heard. Simple. Just respect the will of the people, and you don't need to be calling for peace, because everybody wants peace. That's why they waited. They went to the elections, and after the elections, during the elections, they made their voices loud and clear, so that anyone of good conscience could hear and see that the people want change. So this calls for peace. We all want peace, and we're asking people, as frustrated as they are, that if they are going out to manifest, that they do so in a manner that's peaceful. Yes, they'll be peaceful, but the reason they're going out is because the ruling party, under President Biya, orchestrated fraud during the electoral process, and it seems hellbound to announce on Monday that President Biya is the winner. The arithmetic doesn't add up.
Right. So the administrative authorities, militants, officials of the ruling party, and other persons are telling the young people, don't be manipulated, don't listen to those who are asking you to take to the streets, and so on. And you and all the members of Project C, Project Cameroon, telling the young people, you have to defend your vote. You have to fight for justice. And such calls are seen by the administration as calls for insurrection, calls for disorder, calls for violation of the laws of the land. What's your response to that?
No one is calling for an insurrection here. That is outrageous. And that's just an intimidation tactic. Whether we like it or not, the future of Cameroon belongs to its young people. It is their destiny that we are all playing with. It is their destiny that is being compromised. For all of these people who are talking to the young people, they do not know how many young people have lost their lives trying to cross the Sahara Desert to get into Europe. For what reason? Because they are looking for an opportunity to aim a daily bread, to live a life of dignity. It is unconscionable that people are so disconnected from the reality. 60% of the population of Cameroon is below the age of 35. That's a young population. That young population needs opportunity. Opportunity which has not been created in the last 43 years, and is not going to be created in the next 7 years if the circumstances do not change. It is their destiny that they must take into their hands. 65 years ago, young people, teachers, clerks, accountants, they decided to fight for the independence of our country, Cameroon. They gave their blood and sweat for us to live in a country that we can call independent, that we can be proud of. 65 years later, we have not found that liberty and prosperity that our founders dreamed of. But that was their time. They did what they could do. Now it's this generation's time. You are as good as fighting for the liberation and independence of Cameroon. There was a time when I was young and in Cameroon. How we got multipartism in Cameroon was because we took to the streets. We didn't just stay in our classrooms at the university. It was blood and sweat that gave us multipartism. That fight is still unaccomplished until we get a country that is truly free, where we can have an election and a transition without the bullet. And I'm going to remind President Biya and all his supporters that when President Biya ascended to power, not one life was lost. We didn't have to destroy property. A constitutional process was followed, and he ascended to the position with the dignity that it deserves. I hope he leaves the position with the same dignity and respect of the laws and constitution of the country as how he got into it.
So if Project C is not calling for insurrection, what are you asking them to do? What is the content of that call for young people to fight for justice, to fight for change? What is the content of that call if it is not insurrection, as you have said?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. Let me say, all over the world, people continue to fight for justice every day. Unfortunately, people think that fighting for justice only means that you have to go out to the street and manifest. Yes, it has to be part of it. But civil disobedience takes various forms. And nobody, not one person on the side of the truth has called for an insurrection. There's people on the side of lies or alternative facts who are continuously fabricating this notion of an insurrection, just as they fabricated the outcome of the elections at the National Vote Counting Commission. It's a fabrication, a figment of their imagination. Nobody has said that. We are asking people, young people, to defend. Remember, we said this to them: stay at the polling stations and defend, protect your vote. And they did it. Nobody told them how to do it. They did it. So we don't have to tell them how. We have to tell them to be crusaders of justice, because it's for their future, not my future, it's their future. We want to see 30 million Cameroonians thrive in a country that has enormous potential, held back by a regime that seems to be largely disconnected from the reality of its people. So we're asking people to devise ways in which they uphold justice. Individuals can protest in their own way. There are many, many, many ways. We're on this journey. It's going to be a long journey. It doesn't have to be something that happens tomorrow or the day after. But people must stand up for justice and demand that this government be held accountable if they do not respect the will of the people, without which we don't have a country. And like I said, if they could call it a call for insurrection, I would say practically we're experiencing a coup d'etat, where the president has essentially legitimacy, but really wants to impose himself on the will of the people, and obviously will do so with the backing of the military.
Right. About the defense and security forces, though peaceful protest is a constitutional right enshrined in the Constitution of the Republic and even in international legal instruments duly signed and ratified by Cameroon. But what we've been seeing in Cameroon and even in other Central African nations and beyond is police repression, police brutality as a response to that constitutional right. And we'll talk about that when we come back. We want to go to the newsstands now. We're looking at what the newspapers reported this week. We'll be right back in a minute. The Guardian Post reports that the Anglophone crisis has reached an incurable level with the recent killing of a member of parliament, Honorable Abe Michael. Municipal Update qualifies the killing of Honorable Abe Michael as baseless killing. Cameroon Tribune talks about post-election litigations, and Cameroon Insider tells its readers no petition prospers at Constitutional Council. While the Guardian Post highlights the decision of candidates O.C. Joshua and Cabral Libi to withdraw the petitions earlier filed at the Constitutional Council. Another issue of Cameroon Tribune announces the official proclamation of results of the October 12 presidential election Monday. In the same vein, the National Post qualifies Monday as judgmental with regards to the official proclamation of results of the October 12 presidential election. The Horizon says, ahead of presidential poll proclamation, Project C reminds Constitutional Council members of constitutional duty, and one of the leaders of the project, veteran journalist Eric Chinji, tells the Constitutional Council members, I quote, your silence or acquiescence in the face of clear irregularities will not be forgotten. The Voice, testing the waters, Bia's last-dish deal meets Stonewall. In an editorial, the paper says the proclamation of official results of the 2025 presidential election in Cameroon feels like a war declaration, with the deployment of forces of law and order across the national territory to check any possible uprising. And Municipal Updates report that the nation unites against disorder and violence. Thank you for staying with us. We are still with our guest, Barrister ARREY Obenson, joining us from St. Louis, Missouri, United States of America. Barrister, you've sent a message, you at the level of Project C, to the defense and security forces with regards to the rising tension in the country in the context of the October 12 presidential election. What exactly are you telling the defense and security forces to do in this context?
Well, our message to the defense forces was that this is a civil and political process. Essentially, the defense forces are designed to protect the country. And in this case, our appeal to them is to stay out of this political process. That nobody no soldier should take up arms against a fellow countryman, because that is actually contrary to the spirit of their responsibility as the defense forces of the country. And it's actually, if you think about it, people exercising their rights and responsibilities should not be considered as enemies of the country, because that's only how countries become better. That's how countries develop. That's how democracies become strengthened, is when people participate. And the way people participate in democracies is through active participation. And that active participation has to be by way of the manifestations, which in this case is being seen as an insurrection. So I just want our appeal to the military was that they stay on the sidelines, because their role is to protect the country and not to fight against its citizens.
And you're saying that they should stay aside. I don't know what you mean by that. They shouldn't go out, because whenever there is protest, we see them on the streets. Even now that there is no protest, or there are some few protests erupting in different parts of the country, in Garoua, in Marwa, in Gaoundéré, in Kairé, in Yaoundé, and so on and so forth. Even in cities like Douala and other areas where there's basically no protests, we see them on the streets in the different major junctions of the cities and towns of Cameroon, combat waiting.
So the police obviously have to do their job as providing security, right? That's important. That's their job, which is different from the defense forces that we addressed this letter to. The defense forces, on the other hand, are to protect the country, to defend the country, not against its citizens, but against enemies that are foreign. So if you think of what is going to be happening, we ask these forces to play their role. They too are citizens. They too went to vote. They too know the outcome of these elections. Would a soldier who went to vote, who knows the outcome of the results, stood down on a peaceful protester who is just wanting the will of the people to be upheld? It seems to me that is an order. If that order comes from authority in the military, that is an order that a soldier must not accept, because it is their oath as well. It is their oath not to execute orders that are contrary to the Constitution. So if somebody is just walking down the street and manifesting, and a soldier opens fire on them, let me also remind them that at that moment where the soldier is performing or executing an unlawful order, they too can be held accountable for that act. Not only their superiors, but they, the soldier, for carrying out an unlawful order. It is part of their oath. They are taught this in school, and this is not a fabrication. So we just reminded them of what their oath is. And that's, we have, the police people can be out there, but let them not perform unlawful acts, because the people, what they are doing is exercising their constitutional rights. And this is presumption. We're just asking them to do what is right, what they are supposed to do. We're just reminding them.
Right, as explained by Colonel Atonfak Cyril, head of the communication department of the Ministry of Defense, during one of the editions of La Vérité en Face on Equinoxe television some years back. The military code states that any officer who executes an unlawful order from his superior bears full responsibility of his actions. And so I want us to talk about the Constitutional Council, the role of the Constitutional Council. But before we do that, we want to bring to you another perspective of this whole thing, the perspective of the ruling party, or those who are in the ruling party, those who are in the administration.
watered down to nothing. And so it is very, very important for us Cameroonians to understand that peace cannot be bought in the market. Neither can you find peace anywhere. It is within us. Nobody can deny God. What kind of love? What are we killing ourselves for? We will all die one day and this nation will remain.
Welcome back. So, about the role of the Constitutional Council. In your message to the Constitutional Council, the message of Project C to the Constitutional Council, you are highlighting the point that the Constitutional Council cannot or shouldn't go ahead to uphold injustice, but it has the capacity, according to Article 47 of the Constitution of the Republic, to turn the tides, so to speak. Tell us more about that.
Yes, the Constitutional Council is a court of justice. And courts of justice are not clerical. They are not just they're not there to perform an administrative function. They are actually designed by philosophically to provide justice. So every ruling that comes out in the court should be one that upholds justice. And in the context of the Constitutional Council, created, by provisions of the Constitution, it is incumbent on the court to ensure that if there are irregularities observed in the electoral process, that its ruling takes into consideration what those irregularities are, to the extent that it has the capacity to nullify the elections. It cannot, as we have seen in the past, only be a court that reads out a report that is presented to it. Then why then do we need 12 wise people sitting on a bench to read the report of a national electoral commission? So we wanted to just remind the court of the severity of the moment and the immense responsibility that it has to either make or mar this country with one decision. That was the purpose of this letter that we addressed to every one member of the Constitutional Council, and which we made public. We sent to, which everybody has seen in the newspapers. But that was really to put the conscience of the people of the court, so that they look at this moment as a moment in history, a defining moment for our country. And I hope that it made an impact.
To be very clear on this, what are you asking the members of the Constitutional Council to do at this point?
We're asking for them to stop and think about what is it they are going to proclaim. Are they going to proclaim the will of the people, or are they going to be an instrument of injustice? That's what we're asking them. And being a lawyer and in the spirit of the law, we do not tell the court what it should do, but we remind the court of what it ought to do, and hope that the court, which in its infinite wisdom, which is supposed to be what the Constitutional Council is made of, will make the decision in the interest of the people.
Barrister ARREY Obenson, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
And that's it for today's edition of The Insight. Thank you for staying with us. God bless Cameroon. Goodbye.